When you see that the world has become so inverted that black is white and white is black and day is night and night is day, and suddenly on Easter Sunday, you're celebrating National Transgender Day. Not every Easter Sunday. Got to be careful, because you know what? The police are going to come knocking on my door. I'm saying something wrong. The fact checkers are going to be all upset. Corinne Jean-Pierre, we're going to get to this in a second, already saying that is misinformation. They named March 31st, which just happened to fall on Easter Sunday, just days ahead of an election. They named that National Transgender Day. But you wonder why people are saying, gee, I kind of feel like I get to reminisce about the good old years 4 years ago. Hence the Make America Great Again slogan playing very much to the crowd, shall we say. MSNBC is really annoyed about this. They're like they're especially annoyed about the Bible thing, because you see, Donald Trump has doubled down on Christianity. By the way, Judaism as well, right? He's always been extremely pro-Israel. His daughter is Jewish. She converted. The grandchildren are Jewish. The son-in-law is Jewish. So he's doubling down on these Judeo-Christian traditions. And that makes the left really mad. I mean, you should see him over on MSNBC. They're flipping out. You know, Chris Matthews, he's an interesting guy. He's sort of what the Democrat Party maybe used to be, right? And it's morphed and it's changed and it's become something that, frankly, I consider very unrecognizable. Anyway, he really doesn't like this idea, nor do the MSNBC hosts, that Donald Trump is selling Bibles of all things. Watch.
For himself, to fight for himself on Easter. Think about the message Joe Biden sent. The message, perhaps, if you went to church over Easter, you might have heard one that was similar about Easter being a day of renewal, a day where you have a solemn moment to look at your relationship with God. And I'm just curious, with this man whose every day is a miserable march toward what God-fearing Christians would call hell, okay, by his actions, why is this lost on people who love Jesus and follow the message of Jesus?
Well, I think a couple of things. I was thinking back to when Ronald Reagan, the once beloved Republican leader, now in second place to Donald Trump, apparently, back when he was shot and nearly killed in 1981, the leader of the opposition, who was the Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, went to see him in the hospital, George Washington Hospital, and he knelt down next to Reagan, and they prayed the 23rd Psalm together. The Lord is my shepherd. This presidential candidate, Donald Trump, is saying, I am the shepherd. I'm him. I'm God. It's astounding to me. It's astounding to me that he can talk like this. It's blasphemy, as Maureen Dowd said in the New York Times yesterday. That's how he talks. Now, I just saw some numbers. I've been away for a couple of weeks in Vietnam teaching over there, but I have to tell you, a couple of things have finally come to my mind. One is, when I was up there in New Hampshire, my 10th primary up there, I saw a lot of really poor people waiting in line for 2 hours to see Donald Trump. Really poor people, white people in most cases. And I said, what's going on here? And I don't know if these are the crosstabs relate or why it relates, but they really want this guy to be their president again. And then I saw the Florida Atlantic University poll that came out in March. And it pointed out that the only economic group in the country that likes Trump is under 50,000 a year. Not 50 to 100, not above 100, only people below 50,000. I can't put it all together. But maybe people
so
are hard up, people have
all right, let me jump in. I can put all this together for you. In other words, it's not that hard. You actually need economic policy that does something for everyday folks, for middle Americans, for poor Americans. The system, as it has worked, I mean, go listen to Oliver Anthony music again. It doesn't work for the people in the middle. It maybe works for the very lowest, right? You know, you're coming here from South America, you come in illegally, and what do you know? You get a hotel room for 6 months and a phone, and you're off to the races. You even get money on an ATM card. They will help you if you're at the very bottom of the barrel. If you're at the very top, hey, you're golden, right? You could be a private equity investor who gets away with counting his income as investment and therefore pay like barely anything in taxes. I mean, this is what happens, ladies and gentlemen. We've turned into Latin America, literally. I mean, I talk about that from the political perspective and how they're going after Donald Trump, but literally we have become Latin America, which has no middle class. You got some on the top, you got a lot on the bottom, and you got a whole bunch here in the middle. I used to talk about it as an hourglass economy, but maybe we need like some kind of pyramid to describe this. The point being, though, if you're on the bottom, they'll help you out. They're all about that. And if you're on the top, they'll help you out because they expect that you're going to help them out too. And so it is the majority of Americans, by the way, our middle class, that has made us a success, right? For so long. That has been America. That's what the American dream is, to come here and take a vacation once or twice a year and have the picket fence and the little house and the car, and you know what I mean. And that's gone. So yes, people in New Hampshire, where I'm from, born and raised, and spend a lot of time in still, they look at Donald Trump and they say he can help. And when they think about their life from when he was president, they know that he did help. I've looked at the numbers. Median incomes for the majority of Americans, they grew at the fastest rate since Kennedy. You got to go back some 50 years to find income growth like this. And you know what? That income growth has disappeared under Joe Biden. So he sits there and tells you, I'm working for the everyday man. He's not. He can't even relate to the everyday man. For goodness sakes, he's having a big shindig at Radio City Music Hall where people are paying $500,000 to get their picture with him and Obama and Clinton. And they got Lizzo up there on stage. We'll get to that. But I'm sorry. He has done a miserable job with the economy. And so when people say, okay, well, I'm looking to Trump as someone who can help, they mean it. And I think Donald Trump sees himself. I know he sees himself as someone that can help because he's like, well, this doesn't make sense and this doesn't make sense. And why the heck are we doing that? And he's willing to do this despite all odds being stacked against him. I mean, he's got 4 lawsuits right now, multiple indictments against him, and yet he still keeps going. So he's doubling down on religion, and it really makes the left mad. You got the New York Times coming out with a big article. This guy is a political reporter, I guess. He's got a nifty little headline, which he's running with some video. Can we see that, Drew? This cracked me up. This is cool technology. This is what I'm telling you. We got to figure out how to do this one. So you get Michael Bender. He's a New York Times political reporter, and he's there talking about how there's this church-like sort of feeling at these rallies. I've been to some rallies. I can tell you this. People at those rallies are so nice. They are so nice. There is kind of like maybe a Christian sentiment there, because when you think about the mentality of all those people and you're squeezed in, and they are just so nice. So they don't like that. They don't like that on the left. They're really worried about it on the left. But then again, they're not doing themselves any favors. Now, are they? They're really not, because consider this. Biden puts out a declaration. He wants to applaud National Transgender Day. I should say, what is it? A proclamation? A declaration? A proclamation, forgive me, on Transgender Day of Visibility 2024. Don't say Happy Easter. You had to say Happy Transgender Visibility Day. We got some Easter cupcakes. I'm like, oh, maybe they could be like half cupcake, half cookie. I digress. Anyway, on Transgender Day of Visibility, we honor the extraordinary courage and contributions of transgender Americans and reaffirm our nation's commitment to forming a more perfect union where all people are created equal and treated equally throughout their lives. Okay, first of all, no problem with it, okay? No problem. You do you, I do me, we're all fine. I'm very libertarian, you know that. But for goodness sakes, Joe Biden, you knew, either that or you guys are just so unbelievably stupid. You had to have known that when you declared this, I guess he put this into action some 2-3 years ago as soon as he came in to the Oval Office. You knew that this would be Easter Sunday before the election, right? If you didn't, then you guys are just plain old stupid. And it's quite possible that they didn't, because after all, Bidenomics.com, our friends over at the Americans for Prosperity group, americansforprosperity.org. They bought that, Bidenomics.com. And they bought that because Biden's team, with all his, TikTokers, somehow forgot to. So it's entirely possible that these people are just so stupid that they did not realize that this might become a little bit of an issue, just a little bit of a scab you don't want to pick at months before the election, to have Easter Sunday and National Visibility Transgender Day on the exact same time. Anyway, they want you all to know that it's misinformation if you dare to say this is Easter Sunday and Transgender Day of Visibility is the same thing, because you see, Easter Sunday changes every year, whereas a proclamation for Transgender Day of Visibility, it won't change. It's going to be March 31st from here on out. Let's watch that crackerjack spokesperson from the White House just minutes ago trying to make that very, very clear. Here's KJP.
So the criticism over the Transgender Day of Visibility, the White House said that the president wouldn't abuse his faith for political purposes. Does the president think that's what Republicans are doing on this?
I mean, look, just a couple of things, and really so surprised by the misinformation that's been out there around this, and I want to be very clear. Every year for the past several years, on March 31st, Transgender Day of Visibility is marked. And as we know, for folks who understand the calendar and how it works, Easter falls on different Sundays, right? Every year.
Okay.
And this year it happened to coincide with Transgender Visibility Day. And so that is the
because we were too stupid and we picked this day.
That is where we are.
Well, we did it deliberately.
I do want to say a couple of things because I think it's important here. As you just stated in your questions, what we've been hearing out there, a lot of misinformation done on purpose. And as a Christian who celebrates Easter with family, President Biden stands for bringing people together and upholding the dignity and freedoms of every American.
Okay.
Now,
You can say that all you
and
want, just like you keep telling us, Karine Jean-Pierre, that Bidenomics is working. The reality is people don't feel that Bidenomics is working, and they don't feel that Biden is really, say, all that Christian, right? You compare and contrast Joe Biden with, it even came down to the Easter egg hunt. You couldn't have any religious symbol on your Easter egg, so don't draw a cross, even though you might actually think that's somewhat synonymous with Easter. Don't do that, because you're automatically going to get disqualified. You compare and contrast that sort of mentality with, say, I don't know, like the Trump family going to Easter Sunday brunch, and we have that video, right, of Melania and her son and her father, and they're walking in. This is at Mar-a-Lago to meet Donald Trump, and obviously I'm using this as an excuse to show you guys Melania video, so I hope you appreciate it. Anyway, the point being that they look at Donald Trump and they say, look, you were able to fix things. Granted, you are no saint, buddy, like no saint, right? But they kind of like that about him too, because he's willing to just call it like it is. And they like that he's willing to fight, like somebody finally willing to take on the establishment and take it on. He will, and he does. And he's had no choice but to do. I mean, to think that they were going to fine him $500 million. He's still on the hook for 175 million. How dare I? Million. I mean, these numbers are crazy. Absolutely, positively crazy. And so they're continuing to go after him every which way to Sunday. No pun intended. And you wonder why Americans feel like they have to stick up for him, why they see him as almost sacrificing himself, because he kind of has, right? Like his life is over potentially. You've got generations of wealth that could be wiped out if the left gets their way. And yet he keeps on humming, right? He keeps going.